welcome y'all to the March 21st, 2019 regular meeting of the Granada Community Services District, which is now called to order. And I just want to remind the public, if you'd like to speak on an issue for general public participation or any of the items on the agenda, please submit a speaker slip. And we will start with the roll call.
Okay, President Matthew Clark.
Is right here.
Vice President Barbara Dye.
Here.
Director Jim Blatcher.
Here.
Director David Seaton.
Here.
Director Eric Stigmell.
Present.
Okay. General Manager Chuck Duffy's at the table, also legal counsel Liz Parkin, and I'm Delia Quito, the Assistant General Manager.
And we just came out of a special meeting earlier at which, council?
No reportable actions, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right, do we have any general public participation on items not on the agenda? Not seeing any. All right, we will move to action agenda item 1, which we have been requested. The people who are making this request and appeal have actually can't be here tonight, and they've requested that they really would like to be here, and they request that we table the item number 1 until they can be here, which I assume would be next meeting. So that's how we're going to proceed. So item number 1 is tabled. Item number 2, consideration of Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside General Budget.
Okay, our favorite item every year. So what we've got before you is the budget prepared by General Manager Beverly Marshall for the SAM, O&M, and Capital Improvement Program for the coming fiscal year. She's laid out a bunch of graphs in the front in her agenda memos and whatnot. And I'll probably give at some point in time Barbara and Jim a chance to go into the details of how these discussions occurred at SAM. I guess the big picture when we look at this is each and every year we try and look at, there seems to be larger and larger increases in the SAM O&M budget, and this year is no exception. So what Delia's put together for me, and I did as well, is kind of a year-over-year increase in SAM expenses. And I guess the best page to look at would be page 35.
Our page 35.
Yes, big page 35, yes. So some of the bigger ticket items are out, and the ones that are controllable are wages, health benefits, retirement contributions, item 10, professional services, things like that. Those are kind of the big ticket items I look at. And as you can see, wages have increased substantially since 16-17 from 1.138 to 1.626 proposed. Health benefits from 231 to 343. Retirement contribution is almost doubled on line 4 from 164 to 296. Delia put together the spreadsheet, like I said, speaking broadly. If you look at the O&M budget and you take away line 22, so line 22 is those infrastructure projects, which would be more appropriately in a CIP kind of outside the O&M budget, just because of the gyrations between the districts that's in here now. So we remove those from the budget because they artificially inflate or deflate any given year's O&M expenses. So the increase from 16-17 to 17-18 was 18%, and next year is 21%, and this next coming year is almost another 20%. So we've basically got 20%, 20%, 20% over the last 3 years as a total increase in expenses. Now each year I report this stuff. That's not in your thing, Eric. That's calculations we've done. It's not in their budget. Okay. So each year we discuss this budget, and each year your board turns to me and goes, what can we do about this stuff? And there's not a lot, because the budget is set by SAM and SAM management, the SAM board. So it's presented here for our preliminary look-see and then eventual approval. So there's just a lot of increases going on at SAM. Some of them maybe need to be done. You know, I'm not privy to the details of what's happening in the actual maintenance of the treatment plant yard and whatnot. But there's just a lot of increases over and above what, you know, simple CPI would seem. So it's been a recurring problem a little bit, but I don't know what we can do about it. And maybe Barbara and Jim have got any input from what's happening at the SAM level, SAM board level.
Well, we discussed this, I guess I'm on the SAM Finance Committee. We did not have a meeting. We were just sent this with an opportunity to make comments. At the, not the last SAM meeting, but the one before, I raised a lot of questions about the major increases in so many line items. And to be honest, there wasn't much support from anyone else on the SAM board. I didn't really get anybody else who seemed to care about it. The other thing that I had asked for, which goes to the point you just made, which was I asked for, you know, they essentially have 4 parts of the budget: administrative services, treatment, environmental compliance, and infrastructure. And I asked for a version of the budget that did not include infrastructure, which I think is what you're saying as
Yes,
well.
that's what we
Because I feel
calculated.
as if when you compare year to year, the infrastructure budget has varied considerably, so it's really hard to judge year by year what your increases are. So I did get a copy of that. It's still pretty significant increases. It's very hard to drill down and figure out which of these are appropriate and which are not from the position of a board member, a SAM board member. And, you know, when you're there, you're sitting as a SAM board member. I mean, I'm looking at the operations and maintenance without the infrastructure division costs. And premium pay is going up 22%. Legal services going up 81%, which I know there's a lawsuit going on, but still. Insurance is going up. I don't think they really can control that. Equipment rentals going up 134%. Supplies are going up 103%. And on that one, when asked, they made a case that actually the cost of the supplies that they use to keep the plant functioning, the cost is going up regularly, and equipment costs are going up 73%. It seems as if the manager of SAM was able to respond for a lot of these changes and make what seemed to be a credible case for why these prices had gone up considerably. But again, I feel frustrated because I don't think I have the knowledge or expertise to really look at this and weigh in on it. And given that pretty much everyone else on the SAM board seemed okay with these increases, we recommend approval of this budget. The other thing I'll comment on is in terms of infrastructure, based on, I think, a recommendation from the 3 member agency managers, the idea is for the budgets going forward is to equalize it at 2.5 million a year.
2 to 2.5 million. Right?
Yeah,
Right.
per year, so that rather than having big jumps and, wild fluctuations in infrastructure costs, that if you have a steady infrastructure cost, the problem that I'm talking about how to compare year-to-year costs goes away, because you no longer have that wildly fluctuating infrastructure cost. That's a good thing, it seems to me. And if all the costs are not, all the funding is not used in 1 year, it would roll over to the following year, I guess, for, the costs that year. And I'll just say that the other thing that's going on is that this budget proposes work on the next northernmost section of the pipeline of the, it goes from essentially here north, and then does the engineering work for the northernmost section. And when those two projects are done, the IPS will be essentially repaired, fully repaired.
All the force main sections of the IPS will have been replaced.
Which seems like a really good thing.
And that was my goal in the CIP budget discussions, was that's priority number one, fix those pipes.
And so that's in there, and I'm really supportive of that, that makes sense to me. I think the CIP document is easy to read and again, gives you a pretty good sense of what's being proposed. Again, for someone who's not an engineer, take my spot, Eric, it's really hard to evaluate, but it makes sense to me, the infrastructure costs that are in here. I do feel that there's a case to be made that there are maintenance needs for SAM that have not been addressed and that they are being addressed, which is one of the reasons I voted for this budget. Again, the issues around all the personnel costs, we're talking pretty much a 14, 15, 16% increase in all of the personnel costs. We're talking about an additional person on the staff, which they made a credible case that they need an additional staff person. I know there's disagreement about whether that person is needed, but they made a credible case. So,
So I have a question about
Yes.
that, because I know they talk a lot in here about staffing up as part of their succession plan.
right.
So that implies that they would then staff down as people retire. So do they provide long-term staffing projections, or do
No.
they
No.
not?
No,
No, and I noticed that and circled it too. The language in here almost makes it sound like, yeah, after these other people retire, we'll have everybody trained and to step in there, and then we won't need anybody else because that person will now do the job for 20 or 30 years. But that ain't gonna happen.
And
We know that's not gonna
Right,
happen.
and Barbara says, they can make a credible explanation, if you will, for staffing up, and they could probably make an equally credible one for staffing down. Succession plan. If you've got one operator, you obviously need a succession plan. If you've got 6, if you've got 20, obviously not. You've got enough to absorb it. So, and to Barbara's point about the CIP, I think I reported this last time, but I think it's worth reporting again. When we decided on the CIP budget last year, we kind of agreed informally for Clemens threw out a number of $2 million a year, and those numbers tend to do, it stuck. And we actually based our rate structure on the $2 million a year. So Sam presented a 5-year CIP this year, the first of the 5 iterations, that fluctuated from 3.4 to 4.6 to 2.3 to something. And, we said, no, we can't do that. We've got to smooth that out, and we've got to prioritize projects. And they said, well, these are all priorities. And, well, no, they're not. The priorities, again, are fixing the IPS and fixing spill points. That's, your 2 priorities, and then everything falls after that. Safety, obviously, always a priority. So I think they've done a better job here at smoothing out CIP. In a regular budget, that infrastructure line item wouldn't be there, and we wouldn't have to do these outside
Right.
calculations
well,
to
that's what I'm
figure
saying,
out.
is
Right,
I wanted O&M without infrastructure.
right, but that's part of the political game between Half Moon Bay paying for the IPS and all that kind of stuff. But in a regular thing, yes. But even, again, we pulled it out. It's a 20% over 20% year increase in costs outside of the infrastructure. So
It's 22% increase,
yeah.
without the
Right.
infrastructure.
And it's 18 point something the year before that, and whatever it is before that. So there's a history there. Barbara's not an expert. I sadly enough am. So I could drill down into the budget, but that's not my job. I don't run that treatment plant, so I'm certainly.
I met with a number of people to try to figure
Right.
out how it is, and I wasn't able to come up with a way that I could credibly say, wait, this shouldn't be, $80,500, it should be $60,500.
Right. Well, I can sit there and look at professional services. Why are you using Calcon services
Right.
for $172,000 worth of work when you've got mechanics on staff. Well, they do technical things we can't do. Well, there's always I don't run the plant, so I can't say, but 20%, 20%, 20% is a lot of money.
I will say that there seem to be in building maintenance services a number of emergency repairs. You know, we all read about the flare every month. And, you know, they are gonna do some work to try to fix the flare that never seems to be working.
The fire
And the fire system cost them a lot of money, and that's a reasonable
Yes.
expenditure, it
Yes.
seems.
Those two items alone are like $550,000.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does seem that the fire alarm system is a reasonable thing. They replaced the panel, and then they discovered that with the new panel, all of the wiring had to be redone.
And again, to Barbara's point, I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit.
It's fine.
I don't usually like to do that in a board meeting, but.
That's okay. Actually, it gets to my
Line
issue
item
of how to do a
21.
good job of this.
You know, and I said this last week, or last month again, that the narrative that we have not funded equipment repair at the treatment plant. If you look at line item 21, equipment for the past, whatever that is, 5 years, $118,000, $1 million, $331,000, $500,000, $398,000. So they are spending money on equipment repair. I don't think there should be anything that should be shirked there with that kind of money being spent on equipment repair. I do take these budgets, I don't just look at them and go, oh my gosh, they're high. I benchmark them against my own treatment plants. I benchmark them against the JPA we belong to, which is fantastically similar to this one. It's not happening down there, so it's not, I'm not just kind of looking at it, taking a stab in the dark. There are benchmarks into it. So
And according to your benchmarks, this is all high
it's just high. We just,
across the board, everything.
I can't explain 20%, 20%. I just can't. And, you know, I actually called up the operations manager at the other KPA, asked him, I don't see a line item big line item for equipment repair. Where is it? And he says, well, we do most of it in-house because we've got 3 mechanics. Okay. So, but like Barbara says, I think there's a level of frustration at the SAM board, you know. It's gotta be it's gotta start with a cost-cutting attitude from management, and I don't wanna say cost-cutting, cost efficiency, and then work its way up. But this is the budget that is presented to us.
And Jim, you were there, would you agree that, you know, I tried to raise some of these
I know.
issues, and I got no support from the rest of the
And
city.
the other point I have also is to see how we're now negotiating the union with the union. And so they want to keep that at 12,
12% over 3 years.
12%, 12% over 3 years. And that's what they aim for. And they didn't really want to negotiate away from that.
Yeah, so the new MOU they're looking at is something like 12%. I don't know what each year is, and remember, they also have the step increases
Right.
in the mid-year, so more like a 6% increase. And that's why I said I picked the numbers that you can control. Wages is a number you can control, you know, if more stuff. Every year I budget down in my other plants for equipment repair. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, because I don't know what big thing might break or might not, but I'm basing it on 3 or 4 years past thing. You know, wages you can control more, you know who
Right.
you have to hire,
For
you know
sure.
what raises you want to hand out, that kind of stuff, so.
And so they,
Healthcare benefits are the same thing, you know, they're getting $2,000 a month in healthcare benefits. It's more than we pay our people, it's more than half than they pays their people, it's more than Montera pays their people. I don't even think Montera's on hers, actually, so.
At what point, because since this does happen every year and there's nothing you can really do, in terms of shaping it, in terms of bringing in an outside consultant to spend some time to definitively put, because to your point, it's tough to say. You can't really just sit there with board members or even yourself and just because you don't know if their staff can really handle it or they really do need outside consultant. You literally need to spend some time in terms of in real time and put together a report and, of all 3 agencies paid an independent firm to look at, you know, the reality so that we could kind of, what you know in your head, kind of put
Right.
together in a 30-page document or whatever to,
Well, the problem with the deal with this stuff, David, they did the staffing level report,
Yeah.
right? And the guy came in and said, you know, 18 is the number, or 19 is the number, whatever he said, and I've told you all before, there's never been a staffing consultant who came in and said, you need to slice staff 25%, because that's their last job in the business.
Yeah.
So, we run a plant similar to this, a 1.25 MGD plant in Corona, and I can't tell you what we staff it with, but it's under 7. And, you know, I think we run the entire water district and sewer district with a recycled water program with under 12 people. The district, a water district, with billing 5,500 customers and things like that, so. Again, I'm not the guy throwing a dart at this going, oh man, that sounds high, though you could. Benchmarking with the things we do. I mean, I've got an org chart that I could show you, that's the org chart for Tenasco Valley Water District. It does both sewer and water, so, yeah. But I don't, you know, to your point, David, I don't know that you could bring someone in to do that, because again, it's fraught with problems. They come in and say, don't spend 400 grand on equipment repair, and spend 300, and something breaks. That's the biggest point. It's a mindset. I've had treatment plant operators who are so cheap, I had to beg them to spend more money. They have a mindset, you know. That's neither, you know, and then I've had treatment plant operators who I tell them to go fix the hole in the fence, and they come back with a $46,000 bid, like I just had 2 weeks ago. So, it's different people. You have to have that efficiency mindset, that I can do this with this number of people. You know, you said, we run too lean down at our plants, and my partner and I have been talking about that, adding staff, because we're too lean. But I'd rather start there and work our way up. So.
I'm going to preface everything I say, but with 60% increase in costs every 3 years, how often do you have to say that's not sustainable? This can't be how it is operated. That's, you know, it just can't be. I don't know, maybe GCSD will stand alone, but I think I have to start being ready to vote no on things. I have a question on this same page, 35, which this whole thing drives me nuts trying to figure out what's what. But, because this page is titled Operation and Maintenance Total, actually it's got all of the divisions in there. This is the entire budget. It's not
With
operation.
infrastructure. Yes, it includes infrastructure.
It includes infrastructure, yeah. This is the entire budget.
Which makes it really hard to compare.
Why it's labeled Operation and Maintenance Total, I don't know. But underneath key changes, number 2, COLA 5% effective July 1st, and applicable step increases. So, do we know, is that COLA is 5%? Is that on top of whatever portion of the 12% raise that's coming 3 years? Is that on top of it?
Well, that's what I mean. This stuff's difficult for me to read, number one, because I'm in private industry, so, but I read through the MOU, and when I discovered the step increases, and Dilly also alerted me to it, but, you know, again, the board members are laymen being handed this budget and saying, here's an MOU, and the step increase kind of looks reasonable in there. It says, well, if you meet these goals during the year, you'll get a step increase on top of your COLA of 3%. Well, no one has ever not met those goals.
So you just said their raise is the COLA.
The COLA is the normal thing, and then the step increase, the COLA is the 5%, and then the step increase is on top of the COLA.
It's my understanding that the COLA was 4%, and I asked about that and was told it's 4%, not 5%.
Well, the COLA is 12% over 3 years. I thought there were negotiations on how that was gonna be chopped up.
543.
Well, I
Okay,
asked about
well,
it for this year, and
that's-
they said 4%.
No, Jim just said 543. I had
That was
heard that.
Matthew's suggestion,
Yeah.
543.
So it's 5% the first year,
I think
4% the second year, 3% the third year.
That was the negotiating offer.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
right, so, and obviously that's what they're plugging into the budget. Sam's got the approval of the MOU on their Monday agenda.
But
So-
here's the thing, if we don't approve it, what do we say? What exactly do we question? Do we say we don't like this line item, we don't like that line item, we don't support the additional staff person?
Or what's even the next step? If we kicked it back to them and said no, would they would put together a revision to it, or they would just, it would,
But here you go again, let's just, say all three agencies say, no, this is crazy, you've gotta cut. Now the burden's on all three agencies, and you're telling the people who are managing it, who are supposedly the most in the
Right.
know,
Right.
to cut arbitrarily. You know, I'm sitting here telling you, I run these plants, I know what I'm doing. I couldn't just sit here and cut arbitrarily. I could do it if I sat down there, and not arbitrarily, but, to your point, Barbara or Matthew, I don't know what you can do, because you've got to approve the budget, and maybe the thing to do is approve the budget and just put a letter in there for what it's worth, saying, this is unacceptable, you know, we ran this plant for past 8 years with 14 people, on and on and on, and now we're 18, and, you know.
And we have to say,
So-
our memories are not that short. We remember that last year's budget had to be amended by a big chunk.
Right.
And now this has to go up another 20%. And there's nothing to say that come December, there won't be another big chunk asked for. I think we should tell the management not to cut arbitrarily, but you know, manager, you know this stuff in detail. You don't cut arbitrarily, there are spots, you have to find it.
Well, and that's the prioritization problem, and like I said, we
Yeah.
focus mostly on the CIP when we talked about this at our managers meeting, and I'll give you the example, the Princeton pump station is a SAM pump station out there in Princeton, obviously, it's got a force main that goes right down the middle of Princeton. So on the CIP, I think they had that force main being replaced in the second year as a priority. It's a priority that needs to be replaced in 2 years. I assumed it was a section of the IPS mistakenly. So I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. Then I found out, no, it's a section going down the middle of Princeton that's never had a problem. That's in the middle of Princeton that doesn't have a high spill, issue, probability. And I said, well, that's not a year 2 priority. That might be a year 5 priority, or 6 priority, whatever. Year 1 priorities, whatever direction of it, the big IPS, the pump stations that serve the IPS, the overflow tanks, the Princeton pump station that's near the lagoon, the actual pump station, an overflow tank there. Those are priorities. But they view all this as a priority. The feedback I got was that Montero really wanted that force main section replaced in Princeton. I said, who in Montero? Well, a couple people. Okay. You don't budget that way. This will sound wrong. I'm here as hopefully your expert telling you when we do our budget, tell you, I don't want you to tell me I think the Princeton force main needs to be replaced. So, but that's the level of lack of knowing how to prioritize this stuff. So.
Okay, well, one of the things we did was redo the budget approval process for SAM. And we started it in the fall with the CIP, rather than starting it with the budget in
Right.
January. Because it seems that the CIP is vital to the overall numbers. But again, I feel as if the CIP budget and the other 3 budgets combined are 2 separate things. I mean,
They are.
they need to be looked at separately. And I feel as if I can get better feedback from you on the need for CIP projects than some of these line items in the O&M budget, you know? I mean,
Absolutely, yes.
So when you look at, 24% increase in insurance premiums, well, evidently, they're not just padding that, insurance premiums have gone up. So you can't really, that's a big jump, but it's not something that they can control. And you look at, chemicals is one of the ones that's going up 37%. Well, they are part of a consortium from which they buy chemicals. And they're actually looking at the projected prices for the chemicals they use, and that's the increase.
Right.
So, there's a lot.
But that's why I don't concentrate on those numbers.
But
because-
that's what I'm saying, is how do you say to them, I guess you could go after this one additional position. I actually come down kind of in the middle on that. I think it does seem as if there's additional requirements, and it would be good to have an additional trained person there. So, I don't
But meanwhile, they're also spending more money on contractors to do things that the people they already have purportedly can't do. And they're gonna hire somebody else, and that's not going down, it's still going up.
one of the questions would be, one of the, possibilities would be to ask for more detail. I asked what kind of backup is, breakdown is available or behind these numbers. That was one of the things that Delia suggested, and I thought that was a really good, because I came and talked to her about all this, is to get the, more detailed budgeting within each line item. And I was told that there wasn't.
Well, that's a big red flag.
I know,
Well, let's go to my favorite one, the accounting. 3 years ago, we had Parsons doing Sam's accounting for $35,000 to $40,000 a year. Local firm, did all the accounting and check writing and all this kind of stuff. For reasons I don't know, they decided not to use them anymore. I heard rumor that Parsons didn't want to do it anymore. I've heard other things that they wanted to take it in-house. They took it in-house, and the person they hired was supposed to do the accounting. It turned out to be too big a burden, so they hired a half-time, part-time accounting technician. That wasn't enough. They turned the part-time accounting technician into a full-time accounting technician. They got their audit. It didn't look well on them, so they hired an outside accounting firm for $60,000. And this is all on top of the new accounting software they installed at a cost over 7 years of $150,000 or $60,000. That's peanuts maybe in this budget, but I took what was costing me $40,000, turned it into a full-time position, and outsourced a big chunk of it again. That's the kind of stuff, and took a system, the non-proprietary system, QuickBooks, and turned it into a proprietary system, which not a lot of people, turns out, know how to do.
But here's the thing,
But
how do we take that kind of comment and turn it into a reasoned, recommendation for a change in the budget amount? Say, well, we on the, GCSD board think that the increase in professional services should be reduced by, $22,000 because, you should be using proprietary accounting software. I don't know how to do a better job of affecting how we review and approve this budget.
well, like I said, you can't, I don't think. It starts with
So-
a cost-cutting mentality from the bottom up. It's just that
So we might as well
You don't have
just
that.
approve this budget. And nothing in the review, when I was sitting in the SAM board meeting, jumped out at me as like, well, this is obviously, there's no justification for this. No, there was a justification that made sense to me for everything. I'm like, well, but there was a legitimate, credible justification for all of these, for the total increase of 20, whatever it was, 22%. So,
In the year 14-15, our O&M budget was, I keep saying our, Sam's O&M budget was $3.25 million.
right,
It's now 5.5 million.
I mean,
We
Jim?
can talk details, and that's what, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
I told you, I look fondly back to the good old days when I was arguing with Steve Leonard between 2.9 and 3.1 as an O and M budget. I was hammering him over $100,000.
Right.
Now,
Yeah, well, mindset. On the previous page, on page 34, I outlined this because it got to me. Staffing at SAM was kept low for many years to reduce the impact on member agency assessments. Well, I suppose you could look at it that way, or you could have written, for many years, SAM operated with just the right number of people to get the job done.
right?
And now, all of a sudden, we need 40, 50, 60% more people. Yeah, I don't get it.
A small part of that is the fact that the reporting requirements have definitely increased. But that's only part.
And they've increased for everybody. They've increased for mine. Sam reports 5 constituents each month from the treatment plant. It's not. You're right, Barbara.
And it's a
You
small
can
one.
have plausible.
I'm just trying to,
I know,
to
you'll,
say that
right.
I've been
You can
trying
have,
to.
it sounds plausible. Why, well, reporting things have increased. Well, how many man hours does that take a week?
Yeah.
You know, we do it a different way. You know, when we look at our plants, we go, okay, we wake up, four treatment plant operators walk into the treatment plant Monday morning. What do they do? That's how we look at it. What do they do? Well, this guy goes and does the reads for this many hours. This guy goes and does this guy does this. And I talked to my operators about this. I said, what's your routine take? And they say 2 hours every morning. You go do the reads, you check this, you check that. And I said, what are you doing the rest of the day? And they said, we're fixing things because things break. Or we're improving things because you want to improve things. Because the routine only takes 2 hours a day. But it's almost like zero-based budgeting. You're looking at it going, all right, 4 guys walk in, what do they do all day? If you kind of look and go, well, that one guy, we're not filling 8 hours, then you go, okay, now 3 guys walk into the treatment plant each day and go, what are they doing each day? And you've got to have redundancy and all that. But yeah, that comment, it was kept low due to agency, that's just the blame game. You're
Right.
right, Matthew. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and that kind of thing appears in numerous places in the text of this budget. And
Are there-
it looks to me like there have been some efforts at small items.
Miscellaneous expenses down 46%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really went out of that one.
Miscellaneous expenses went down 46%.
From 42 to 36.
Equipment rental and lease goes up 57%, however. And then,
And-
supplies. Supplies went up almost 51% in 1 year and that lists office, computer, break room, and safety supplies. 50%, over 50% for 1 year? I mean, it's a small item, well, it was a small item, now it's 105 grand. What? All I can say is, what? Yeah.
So what do we do?
And also, premium pay for doing work that needs to be done outside regular work hours. Again, this is a small item, but I noticed that they upped it for administrative services as well. Premium pay, that went up 3,700%. From $200 to $7,600. For premium pay for overtime paid to staff to perform tasks outside of normal work times. And that's the Administrative Services Division.
Oh, yeah.
I guess they're gonna try to get the audit in on time. I don't know.
It's already late.
I guess they need
And there's no
3,700% more.
There's no ECA either.
So, yeah, I mean, I came away with a lot of, I'm mystified. And then there's other things. Building and maintenance services includes janitorial, landscaping, and other regular building maintenance services. They cut it by 2/3.
You
Huh?
probably outsourced it and it's in, professional services now. Or,
I'm assuming that their janitorial, landscaping, and other regular building maintenance services already are not done by the SAM staff.
right.
So, yeah, and they paid $37,000 in the last fiscal year, and now they're proposing $10,500. That's on 46. And
Because
overall.
It's confusing because there's the 4 separate budgets, and when you look at the budgets together with the infrastructure in there, it's very misleading.
Yeah, and then you get, page 40, our page 49 is treatment by category, and you get things like, line 24 subtotal at the bottom is 29%. Line 25 total at the, and there it's 25%. How's that happen?
It's between the personnel
That's one-
expenditures and the non-personnel expenditures,
Right.
which is what they're trying to do.
Control, yeah, control, that's not personal. It's the meaning of the 20% and the 29% and the 25. Which isn't talking about.
So Jim, what do you think? You've been sitting there.
Well, I think, I mean, the one thing the board can control is the staff. Yeah, and that's what I mean, I don't think we have any, and, you know, the horse right off the barn, I think, this year was the staff. Yeah, I mean, me and Chuck can go through, prioritize the other, the non-personal parts, but the board really has, only really has control over the staff, right? And the staff plate and the salaries, right?
Staff, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about who you hired.
No, yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, you're not equipped to go through line
Right.
item by line item. Like I said, I'm not even equipped. I can look at it and go,
Right.
no, that doesn't pass the smell test, but I don't run it once again, so.
And we had a benchmarking taking place 2 years ago, last year, and that's what they said, we have understaffed. And we believe the benchmarking.
Right. But, you know, I just, it'll just make you madder, but I'll send around our org chart for our Lee Lake plant or the other JPA. Won't do anything, but
Well, I
again,
got the
you
org
have to
chart
get
for
the
Sam.
cost consciousness,
Well, yeah, I think it's cultural, I think it starts from the bottom up, but I think part of that is.
or from the top down.
But yeah, part of that is, I mean, if we're gonna make the case that they're inefficient, we gotta all of a sudden times that by 4, because we have 4 agencies that are doing sewer on the coast. And I think it kind of starts with each agency to say, listen, there's opportunities out there for us to cooperate better, there's synergies that could be found so that things can be aligned up to save costs. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road for us and these other agencies to say, listen, we're gonna go out there, we're gonna find cuts of, you know, as much as we can, and with the goal of, you know, whatever, 10, 15%, which there's tons of things out there dangling that we could be efficient on, and I think that's kind of the cultural change and shift, when we look at that can lead to action and actually putting their, foot to the fire. I think outside of that, I think we're just gonna keep going through the same routine every year. We point the finger at them, they could point the finger back at us, and it just goes around in circles.
Except that the 3 member agencies, 3/4 of our budget goes to SAM. So-
But there's obviously
So that's- so
duplicate
inefficiency is-
cost structures.
Could you put
Inefficiency.
together a list of specific items that you think we should be combining?
I couldn't do a better job than the grand jury report in terms of the basic dangling things that are low hanging.
The grand
I-
jury
I
report
could-
was very vague, unspecific.
I could add on that, but I think
Could you
they
give us
listed
some
software
specifics?
and other things, and, you know, that
Well,
was.
maybe could you bring a report to us on some?
I mean, that was 100 and some pages, I couldn't fathom, I could maybe do put together a 1-page summarizing some of the key findings of that, if you like, but.
Of specific things that we could
You know, but
collaborate
see,
with
once
other
again though,
agencies.
I think it's cultural. I think culturally, if we were already instead of every time,
I mean,
putting it on me.
Are we sharing copier? Are we sharing staff?
Instead of putting it on me, I think the onus, if we were culturally really concerned with that, I think that would flow through to the agencies and how they handle, SAM. I think the reverse is that,
I
there's
think our agency
inefficiencies
is
and
very
and
well
our
run.
inefficiencies flow down to,
I would just say
the
our
same.
agency, I believe, is very well run, and our costs are reasonable, and our increases aren't particularly, out of line.
you
So-
could look at that in isolation, but if you looked at it as a co-side, that we have 4 agencies and cost centers that are going to 4 different places, that could be for sure 1, if not, maybe 2, but there's a lot of things that could be cut that,
I'd like to
and that
see
just
some
goes to
specific
the,
proposals,
that just goes
'cause
to
you
the.
keep saying this.
Well, because I think before you can get into specifics, that goes to the cultural mind shift that needs to take place. Before we can hold
You've made the
them.
cultural mind shift, so maybe you could share
Well, I'm
the
not
implications
on
of
the
that.
SAM board, I would be sharing with them every time I was there, but yeah, I have, for a while, and I think that's a big part of this. I mean, if we're gonna hold them to it and point the finger hard down at them, we have to first take a step back and look at all the agencies and find ways of how we could cooperate better together before we go out and, make an additional hire or hire or outsource something. There's a number of things, and I think culturally, we're not doing as member agencies working together, and I think that kind of, starts that shift that needs to happen. I mean,
Well, your board doesn't have to approve tonight. We usually take our first look at it.
Okay.
Kind of usually wait to hear what happens at the other board meetings, because I'm sure Montara's considering it now. I don't know when Half Moon Bay is, but kind of hear back from them. We'll talk about
Okay.
staff and see what happens. And then you'll get to see it again.
Okay, this is depressing. I just want to
I
point
always
out
hate
again,
introducing this each year.
here's our warrants for the, a month, and it's $167,000 total. $145,000 of that goes directly to SAM. So that's where, we can save dimes and nickels and even dollars here, and we're still gonna pay, that's like 85% of our outlay goes to SAM. So we can save, we can try to tighten up here, but it's not gonna make
yeah, and I think that goes to the cultural
hell of a lot
aspect
of-
of it, though. And
hell of a lot of
because, yeah,
difference.
even to your point, that's, the first step is we could probably do a little bit better job tying things up. But then the next step is we gotta work together with Montara and Half Moon Bay and see, all 3 of us, what synergies could be created. And then that final step is that then that will flow through to.
David, we've got a big
to SAM.
synergy, okay? And that giant synergy is called SAM. I mean, that's the synergy. That's the
Yeah,
synergy you're looking at.
in
And
theory,
so what-
but it's
not in
grown
theory.
over time.
Not in theory, that's the synergy. The key with SAM is we gotta get a hold on the SAM cost, and, because that's the synergy. You're right, could we affect some cost savings if we did some stuff? It's pennies, because the giant synergy is SAM. We all belong to SAM, and if we can make that SAM operation more efficient, that's where we get the bang for our buck.
Absolutely,
Okay.
but I think it goes that cultural change where we're all of a sudden concerned about the pennies and knowing that that's gonna drive change into the dollars
Yeah.
down the road because of the cultural shift in mindset. That all of a sudden, all agencies are constantly looking around saying, how can we work together, how can we, leverage the synergies that we have in place, And I
Okay,
think,
good, thank you.
I have a speaker slip from someone named Delia. I
I just
assume
wanted to make.
I assume that's for this item.
I was looking at some of the past SAM budgets, the older ones, and on one of them I have here from 2008, it actually has 87 line items on it. Now, that may be extreme compared to the 24 you're getting now, but that is part of the problem when I look at the SAM budget. It's not broken down enough. And one of the other things I noticed with some of the older SAM budgets, they used to have these budget detail sections. They've changed it to budget items, so they've taken the word details out, and they don't give you any of the breakdowns. Now, when they're coming up with these big numbers, whether it be for memberships or technical consulting services or whatever it may be, you know, the manager has to have independent numbers for the little things that are adding up to that one big number, and those are the details that we're lacking. They used to be provided, I have them here, they used to be lined up so you knew exactly how we got to that big number. That is no longer being provided to us anymore, so we no longer see how she came up with those numbers. And especially the big ones, you'd think that you would get a little bit more of the detail on, she didn't pull it out of the air, and so there's no reason why we couldn't see these numbers. I've looked at budgets from much larger treatment plants that had $30+ million annual budgets for multiple cities, and they provide those details in their budgets. So I don't know why it's lacking here and why it isn't being asked for from the directors. So that's one of the things.
Well, didn't you ask for it?
I asked for it, when it wasn't available.
We talked
So
about.
maybe we tonight send an official request asking for, essentially the budget I got, which is the overall budget minus infrastructure, because that makes it much easier to compare actual line item increases, because infrastructure, at least in the past, has gone up and down and up and down. And we ask for more detail, or some of the detailed breakdown of the line item.
And we talk
But
about
if we did that,
transparency in government,
Yeah,
that's
or
being more
justification
transparent.
for why
Yeah.
they can't provide it.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be something we could do that would maybe make
Yeah.
this process work.
Provide this.
You want me to provide that? Okay. Just one of the other things that I wanted to mention is I reviewed the staffing reports that were done a couple of years back. And one of the things that I noticed is in every instance where they suggested possibly increasing staff, they said, and I quote this right out, that SAM should consider examining efficient service delivery, internal and external, before increasing staff. And there was never any due diligence done to prove that those issues were looked at prior to jumping into just getting additional staff. So I think that the current general manager just, instead of looking at efficiency inside, just went straight to the increasing staff part. I actually was a little at odds with some of the things that reasoning that she gave for those increases, such as on the accounting side, she's talked about additional reporting, the state controller's report. We do that every year. We have 2 people. Our auditor actually does it. They don't charge extra for it. It's part of the internal control audit work that they do, and it's all on a CD. So we really have very little to do for that. There was also mention about some of the GASB changes. Again, if you have a $150,000 accounting system, you don't really have to do that. There's nothing for a hired person to come on to do for that. She also mentioned the state controller's report. We do that every year. About 50% of the questions are, the answers are the same every year, so they don't change because they're just basic questions. And then the ones that do change take us about an hour at the most. Genevieve pulls the data, I review it and approve it, and then we submit it. So it doesn't take a staff person to do the things that she is claiming in some of these things that I noticed. Now, as far as the operations, which I know very little about, I can't comment on. However, I know that they have hired outside consultants for a lot of that additional work. The report that was just due, that they submitted in January, was actually due in February, was done by an outside consultant. It was actually fairly simplistic. It seems like somebody inside could have done it, but it wasn't. So
Water
again.
Quality Control Board report?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And it is available if you'd like to see that. So those are just some of my, another comment I had is that I noticed if you look at the SAM warrants every month, they seem to be listing things now that aren't just paid by the employer, because I noticed that union dues, for instance, has been on their warrant sheet. Now, I always thought the employees paid their union dues. I see it on warrants, so now my question is, well, is Sam just taking the money out of the paychecks and then paying it for the employee? Why is it on warrants? Because that wouldn't be something that would have to be approved if it's not a warrant for the agencies. And I'm wondering if Sam's paying the union dues. I really don't know. I do notice that there's a safety charge that they get charged every month, and it's considerable. It's, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's like $2,400 a month for safety supplies. Well, how could they be replenishing $2,400 worth of safety supplies on a monthly basis when they've had no accidents? I mean, they've been very proud about their injuries on the job. Well, why do they have these large, I don't know, these are, just, I'm sure there's a logical reason for it, but nobody's asking those questions. So there's a lot of basic things that I don't think people are really digging in to find out. They're just, I just don't think that the board as a whole is doing their due diligence to figure this stuff out. And there's not enough information given for you to really make, so those are just some of my comments. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we ask for a more detailed breakdown on line items. Should we set a limit, like any line item over $50,000 or $30,000 or something, that we ask for the supporting breakdown?
Yes.
Is that a reasonable thing? What do you think?
Or maybe all reasonable, because I am interested in some of the things Delia mentioned as well, in terms of, I'm sure there's
So just for everything?
all reasonable, I mean, if there's certain, it
I don't know,
becomes too
I think we
much.
want to be specific. I don't
Okay,
wanna-
so maybe,
We don't want them to decide what's
$100,000?
reasonable.
maybe above 50 and
100,000?
all reasonable, efforts for everything else.
I would do everything.
Okay, we ask for supporting documentation breakdown for more detailed line items for services. And I would also like to ask for it based on the three budget total, rather than, in other words, excluding infrastructure. I mean, maybe we get a separate breakdown on that, but.
Well, no, the infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah, I
that's
don't even
easy.
think we need-
That's straightforward for
So,
me.
we would like to see a consolidated budget for administrative services, treatment, and environmental compliance. And we would like to see the line item breakdown to support the budget requests. Does that say what we want to say?
I think so,
Yes.
yeah.
If you like, Barbara, I can give you the detailed items
Actually, at this point, I think we're just gonna ask for more
in general.
more detail. So really, we're just talking about, because I do think providing us, and as I say, I should have shared it with you all, but I asked her for that budget, and it's much, without the infrastructure, it's a lot easier to compare year to year.
Well, and Jill will give you this sheet, which does
Oh, okay.
exactly that.
Yeah.
So,
So that's my motion, that we ask for the essentially three area budget, administrative services, treatment, and environmental compliance. We are requesting, sub-budgets.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd recommend you ask for splits, we call it splits.
Okay,
Splits
splits.
for each line item for the treatment division separately, because you want to see what's in treatment, and the admin, or you want both.
No, I want to see all
Environmental
three
compli-
together,
Okay. Okay.
if that's all right, unless
I was just doing it because I think.
I would like to see it by
by individual area.
area.
Because you want to see what it's cost to running the treatment side. There shouldn't be any bleed over between treatment and admin. Admin should be admin, treatment should be
Okay.
treatment.
But then I want to also see a consolidated,
Yeah.
excluding infrastructure, so we want four.
Okay.
I mean, if you have a working accounting system, you just push
Right.
some buttons and get consolidated, combine these three and you get a report, right? This is not,
I think, if we just vaguely say we want more detail, we're not gonna get anywhere.
so we're saying splits. What is the phrase?
So what I'm
that
gonna
we-
do is I'm gonna say, okay, professional services this year is $749,000. Can you show me what makes up that 749? That's the split we wanna see,
Right, how do I put that into the motion?
right? You don't need to,
Okay.
because I know what you
Yeah.
want, so.
I mean, we can draft it, yeah.
Okay,
No, you requested splits for each line item in the budget. the
Okay.
O&M.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Then that's my motion.
All right.
Second, oh,
Are you still on this topic?
Yeah.
Go.
Second, you seconded.
I was just
Oh, you
seconding.
second, sorry.
If you have more, Matthew.
Well, when it comes to details, is this a reasonable way to present all these infrastructure budgets? One big number,
What page you on, Matthew?
pick one. Pick
pick one.
any infrastructure.
I don't know where you are.
There you go, wastewater treatment plant, anaerobic digester, heat exchanger. There's one number on here, $100,000.
Right.
There's no, there's nothing else. There's one number, $100,000. Where do these come from?
They just take these and kind of, like they did last year, I noticed they did the Portola pump station pump replacements. And they budgeted $200,000, and I said, Kishan, that seems like a lot, where'd you get, no, we've talked, and sure enough, it came in this year at like $66,000, and they had a change order for 17. So, they're not talking to suppliers, getting a price from Gerlich Mitchell on the pump they need and putting it into the budget. They're kind of going, and I'm not gonna say that's, I'm not gonna say that's, we do it down south too. If it's a bigger project, you split it out, obviously, but, if you're doing a pipeline project, you'll do linear feet and design, 10% design and 6% legal and all that kind of stuff, but.
So, for something like the Princeton Pump Station rehabilitation, this is just $100,000.
Well, the details are farther in the motion.
What page you on, Matthew?
That's 77.
Yeah.
I don't see any more details other than how much each agency's paying. Like, there have to be.
And this is one of the projects we identified when we did the 3-agency walkthrough 5 years ago. Again, priority number 1, don't let sewage hit the ground. One of the first things we identified, every pump station should have automatic bypass. So if that thing goes, there's a pipe sticking up, you roll up with a Vector truck or with a Gaffner pump or whatever it may be, and you can get stuff going. It's a quick couple and that's it. So that's what they're talking about here. I'd be shocked if that cost $100,000.
Well,
A bunch of piping.
Can something like this be done with no expenditure for engineering?
No, it should be internal because they've got an engineer now. So, yeah, Kishan should. I mean, we did this for all our pump stations, so I had my guy
But
Jeff
if you
go
notice
out
in the
there.
overall budget, outside engineering is way more expensive than in-house.
Right.
Can a project like that be done without, any equipment rental, supplies, no insurance, cost is assigned to these projects. It just bewilders me, or we get 2 pages on each one, and they really don't say anything except, this particular one's gonna cost $100,000. So, okay it.
Don't look at me. I've been beating my head against
No,
this for
I'm
15 years.
I'm just asking you, is this a?
I've got seniority here.
Is this a reasonable way to present
So you want
these
to add
things?
to the motion, request for
I want to
the
include more details for things like
I
this.
think maybe we could do included but not limited to everything that was
Yeah,
raised,
the reality is though, with the CIP is gonna be what it is, and I can look at the CIP. I mean, that's why we talked for an hour and a half about the CIP. I can make a judgment. I don't need to be boots on the ground at the treatment plant figuring out what the RAS pump is doing or not doing. So, I can look at that, I look at that bypass and go, that's high, I just know it's gonna be, and nothing costs $100,000 in piping, so. But at the end of the day, that'll be what it is, right? So Princeton Pump Station, they budgeted $200,000 for the pumps, they came in at $66,000. That's gonna be what it is. The wages and the other stuff is the stuff you wanna lean on, so I think you should focus your efforts on that. I'll focus my efforts on the CIP, because it's easier for me.
Okay,
Okay, now. So you're gonna have all these numbers for us next month, right?
I got nothing else to do, so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, which, should we restate the motion?
Motion was to take the O&M budget provided, remove the infrastructure line item, and then provide splits for each line item.
And we already have a second. How will this work? When and if we pass this, will Delia write a letter to Sam?
We'll just contact them and tell them what we want, via email or phone, whichever is necessary.
Better be
Because I
right-
think we're gonna
better
have
be in
to
writing.
Yeah, well, I think it's gonna be the email followed up by an explanation.
Yeah, okay.
There's gonna be some Sturm and Angst on this one.
Oh, yeah. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Anyone not in favor? No. All right. Thank you. Item 3, consideration of Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side Report.
Well, I think this is.
What's up over there?
Well, I don't know if we talked about this before, but on February 25th, the whole thing of John Zavo coming and saying that the Mark Thomas Company was preventing them from dealing with service calls in Half Moon Bay. If they were tired and overstretched and couldn't make it, that the staff for Sam was directed not to deal with problems. Which doesn't directly affect us, but it's interesting in terms of the overall efficient functioning of, sewer issues on the coast side. I know various entities are looking into this, and we'll have a report back, but I do think it's something to be aware of.
I found that very interesting indeed, yes. So you have
And
sewage-
somewhat overstated, but.
Yes, well, I think,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, does he
We'll-
mean there, there's sewer pouring onto the street and they're over the hill, or they already did their 8 hours, that they'll be back tomorrow?
That's what the SAM staff implied about the outside firms that Half Moon Bay has hired. Again, it doesn't affect Granada, but I think it's interesting.
Well, we help pay the fines.
Is there any- On that note, though, a press release went out today from SAM saying that in 2018, there were 0 sewer spills on the coastline, which is good news, and I think it's something we should all commend everyone for. I think that's excellent news. So, those are my 2 reports. I don't think there's much else that's, I'm happy to say that it looks like I will not be triggered of SAM. I told you about that, right?
Yes.
Yes, so, and we heard a presentation on the first flush presentation, which was excellent. The Resource Conservation District does a good job of looking at the pollution impacts in the drainages on the coast side during storms. And they have all these amazing volunteers who go out there and take samples, like in the middle of the night, in the middle of a raging storm. So it's pretty impressive. So that was good.
Loads of fun.
We authorized money for next year for that,
Yeah.
23, that's right. So going through the next 3 years, we funded that program.
Okay, that's it on Sam?
I think so. Anything else,
So
Jim?
it's enough.
I mean,
Okay, that takes us to the consent agenda. I'm going to pull item 5, the warrants, to ask some questions. Would anyone else like to pull anything for discussion, and if not,
Well, you can actually just ask the question. We can prove it as one.
okay. It struck me right away that there was no outlay for Whitworth Parking.
Oh, I've since cut, sorry, they didn't get their billing out in time, so it didn't make it on warrants, but I have since received their invoice and I've cut a check for it, and we're going to go ahead and pay it, and it will show up on next month's warrants.
Okay, yeah, but at the bottom here, in smaller print, there's two items, Wells Fargo and Whitworth.
Oh, that was
And-
probably there by accident, because I did,
Yeah.
as a note, yeah, those were the two missing. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's not like the lawyers to be late.
Yeah,
We moved our offices.
Yeah, he moved.
It was a
We'll have-
victim of the office.
we'll accept that. We'll have to.
Yeah, keep moving.
A couple other things, speaking about efficiencies, we're paying $4,450 a month for this office space, which is over $53,000 a year. So I don't have a proposal, but I just want to point that out. Our neighbors downstairs, the Harbor Commission, have realized that they say they pay $100,000 a month in rent, but they must have facilities over at Oyster Point too. And that's why they're gonna buy a piece of property and build their own offices, because in the long run, it's much cheaper. And so I think we have to keep that in our mind, that paying this much in rent every year is not fiscally efficient. And then the copier lease at $458 a month, which is almost $5,500 a year. I think you can buy a hell of a copier for that much money.
The service.
The problem is
Just
that
maintenance.
they advance in their technology so you end up with a dinosaur if you actually, and they're very, very expensive to buy them outright, because we've looked at that in the past. I recall several years ago, in fact, when Gina was here, we were looking at buying a copier. It was like $20,000, but then it was outdated within, 3 or 4 years, and it didn't have all the bells and whistles that you have now. So that's the reason for the lease, and it does include include all of our toner supplies, which are very expensive to buy, so we don't have to pay for the toner. And it gives us up to a certain number of copies, both black and white and colored, are included in that. If we go over, there's an extra fee that we pay, but, so that's the reason.
Yeah.
And we actually did update, our lease is like 4 years, so every 4 years we get a better copier.
I agree that toner, I didn't realize the toner was included in that.
And service as well, so if
That's,
something breaks
yeah.
down, we don't have to pay for the
Toner
service.
is really expensive for those kind of machines.
It can be very expensive,
Yeah.
yes.
And, and it includes service, so.
Yeah, which is nice for us, then I don't have to worry about somebody coming out, they're pretty quick too, they respond very quickly.
Okay, I'm happy. Well, not happy, satisfied. All right, do we have a motion on the consent agenda? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay. Item 10, committee reports. Do we have any? Item 11, report on Parks Advisory Committee.
We have a quick one. We haven't had a meeting since your last meeting.
Can I ask, can we put this up in the agenda so that if our report from Parks Committee?
No, we actually did that for 2 months, and then you guys had a bunch of items, and then you got kicked back
Oh,
down.
we took too much time?
No, you had real, so yes, we can put it first on the agenda, so you don't have to sit through this.
That would be lovely.
And remember, you can also raise your hand and ask for special
Moving on.
dispensation.
I just weirdly like budget, so next time. Just a quick thing, we'll probably be asking, hopefully sometime in the next week, the communications team, Directors Dye and Seaton, to meet and review 2 things. This is the only thing we're working on now is the summer program. We have, and this is hot off the press today, a 4-page guide 22 programs this summer.
Well done,
Expanded from 8
congratulations.
last summer. It looks great. Marty's done a great job. And the way it will work with the newsletter is that the newsletter will fold around it, so it's pull out and can be separate. That's really cool, but 4 pages of summer stuff. And actually, we've got, I think, all but one date that's for a September thing ready to go. What we did differently this year is we've set up registration sites for all of those, even if they're free, so that we're asking everybody to register, so if we have to change a date, or we have to change a meeting place, or change a detail, we've got them all registered, and we can communicate with them. We have a number of paid programs as well, so we're using Eventbrite to collect money, and then we'll pass it on to the instructors. Where we're collecting money, we're keeping 10% of it. 5% goes to Eventbrite for their fee for supporting it, and 5 goes to the district, so we actually will have a little revenue coming in for parks to cover some of our costs there, although you're getting an awful lot of free labor. But I recognize 5 of the 6 members of PAC are the organizers of the 22 events and dealing with the vendors and helping get set up and contracted and so on. The newsletter is just an update on PAC. We'll also have a recycling blurb and a where to call in your sewer emergency blurb, so it will be a holistic newsletter of kind of recapping the last year and looking forward to what we're doing this year. We have a snag on the programs that's in your, was it in the things that they just approved on the consent agenda?
Oh.
Yes.
The resolution?
Yes.
Just one of those things that you learn as you become a parks place is we have to be registered with the state DOJ to receive fingerprints. And so we need a records keeper, and that might take some time. So that will be a thing I think we discuss when we have our side meeting on how we want to manage, because we don't know how long it's going to take to get that. And we've probably got, I need to re-go over the rules, but I think we have 5 or 6 of the programs are dependent on us receiving the fingerprints for the instructors. Some of them are directly with the HEAL project or Half Moon Bay Rec or the Yacht Club, and they're registering directly with those entities, so we don't have to worry about them, but there are several that they're registering directly with us, so those are the ones that do it. Any questions?
No, great job.
I wonder if we couldn't piggyback on Half Moon Bay's program?
I asked Eddie Beal, who's their rec coordinator, and he has sent the question on to their council.
Oh.
And I expect when it comes back from their council, they'll say no. But I see him twice a week because I play pickleball there twice a week, so he's chasing that for me to see if they could be our keeper of records, but he hasn't come back on that.
Even just for the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they would just have to be our record keeper. We might have to indemnify them, which I thought was something we could do pretty
It's
soon.
gonna be a lot faster than.
When is the date of the first program that kids are involved?
They, if the CPR training is one, it is the first one where kids are involved, and there's a fee, and we're collecting the fee, and it's May 18th.
Can we change the date, though, probably?
We could probably either change the date, or we could make it adults only.
Right.
It does have, we are requiring on virtually all these programs for kids under 18 to be accompanied by a parent. I think there are only 2 that we're doing the registrations for where that is not the case. And so I don't know if the fingerprint rules still apply if they have a responsible adult with them. But I think it's just the girls sailing and the kids surfing are 2 that they don't have to have a parent or guardian with them.
And we would have been here for those.
Yeah.
Because we may be able to pull it off for those if they're late enough in summer, or,
Yeah.
not too early.
Actually, the dog training, no, they have to have a parent with them with the dog training. I was also asking how to get fingerprinted. That's not till the end of June. Yeah, so let's say if they have a parent with them and the fingerprint's not an issue, then we've only got the 2 programs. It's an issue.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone on the committee for all the hard work. It's amazing what that's been
It's
accomplished.
like, well,
It's really
as
great.
someone said, it is our one tangible thing we're doing for active recreation, because we have a lot of people now say, where's active recreation? This is the one tangible, visible thing we're doing, so parks take a long time, but rec can pull off.
Yeah. I want to also say a loud thank you to the PAC and all the other volunteers. You folks are getting things done. Great, thank you.
The parks is-
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have an attorney's report?
No report.
Do we have a general manager's report?
Nothing further?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
What's happening with our denizens of the wetlands?
Delia-
The tent in the riparian area.
Delia contacted the person from Half.
Yeah, I made a phone call, found out the name of the person who was dealing with that at Half Moon Bay, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet, so I still need to follow up with another phone call and see if I can.
We
find
need
it.
to deal with this.
I agree.
I mean, this
absolutely
isn't
agree.
something we can,
Yeah.
the longer somebody's living,
Right.
and it's a sensitive environmental area.
Right.
The notion, I mean, as I said, I did the monitoring in the Strawflower area for the Hillside Land Trust, and
Council's-
the impact that people have on sensitive, environmental areas
Every
is
day.
just appalling.
It's terrible.
And
I
so-
agree. I'm the one that saw, went out there
I
and
mean,
saw.
but it's been, I thought we were gonna be
Yeah.
dealing with it, and I understand that there's a lot going on.
Council
but
suggested
I-
contacting the sheriff.
I think this is extremely high priority, and I
Yeah.
don't know why we have to wait for half a day.
Council suggested contacting the sheriff, which I'm happy to do, if so instructed. We could see if the sheriff can. do
There's
something.
legal requirements, and I don't know if we can,
Yeah.
there's certain, as I understand it, and I'm no expert, what I have experience with is monitoring the impacts.
And
is
cleaning
you
it
have
up.
to- Yeah, well, then you have to
Yeah,
pay people
yeah.
to clean it up, and there's permits involved and everything else. Is that, depending on how long they're there, your notice requirements are different. And if they've been there a certain amount of time, then you have to give them, you have to evict them more. or
Yeah, I don't
less.
even, I haven't been over there. I only was over there that one time, so I.
I mean, you drive down Route 1 and you look over, and there it is. It looks like
Can you
a
see
great
it?
place to camp,
Yeah.
right in the middle of our willows.
And we don't want to see more people showing up.
I
I mean,
know,
I
it's-
absolutely
I would-
agree. I just, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just
Okay,
need
well,
to know.
Chuck, do you have any thoughts on what would be the next step on this? I mean, I know,
Well, we were gonna pursue the sheriff route, but then I thought you mentioned to call Half Moon Bay, so I think we just gotta make it a priority, call Half Moon Bay. We gotta be able to contact them in the next day or two, and then if not, we contact the sheriff and start going through that process. Yeah. We just have to make it a priority,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, I think, we definitely should contact the sheriff, and they should know applicable laws and
Yeah.
and procedures, so.
Yeah, it's not as simple as you might think.
Yeah.
No, but they can
So
simply
we'll make it a
I
priority.
think they can pretty simply go over it and tell the person or people, you can't live here.
Right. You can't say you have to leave this minute if they've been there a certain amount of time. You say you have X amount of time to leave, is my understanding, but I'm not a lawyer. And one more question on a different topic. Where are we in following up on getting the rest of the pampas grass or jubata grass out?
I have an update on that, and I meant to let you know. I've spoken with Enviromo. He gave us a quote for $1,300 to do the rest of the work. However, he uses big equipment, and with all the rain, if he goes out there with his big old tractor, it's gonna make a muddy mess. And we don't wanna see all those, his tires making, all those indents into the ground and that. So he would have to wait until we have at least a week of no rain.
And the RCD wanted how much?
They were 27 something, it was around
Right.
2,700, so it's about twice as much.
Right,
Yeah.
but they're not putting big equipment
No,
onto
they're
our property.
they're hand doing the work. So we can go ahead and ask them to do it by hand, or we can wait until, it's dry enough for the big equipment to go out there and do it for half the price. The thing is, the fronds or whatever you call them
Are
are
gone.
not yet coming
Right.
up, so we do have a little bit of time to work with, but I don't know how much, that's not my area, so I don't know.
Well, stuff's gonna start coming
Yeah,
back, so
yeah,
we need to get
yeah,
out what's there,
yeah.
so. I'd like to see it move forward myself,
Okay.
and I don't really like the idea of great big equipment going across? I mean, it does compact the soil.
Well, he mows it anyways, he's out there with, it's
With the
a.
same equipment?
Yeah, yeah. That-
Well, he's gonna use a mower to take out the,
Well, they put a different,
Different.
it's like a
They put a-
shovel,
they
big
put a
shovel
boom
thing
on
on
the
it,
back.
but it's the same equipment, the wheels turn the same, everything's the same, yeah. So, I mean, he goes back and forth when he mows it, so.
Is the mattress still on that property?
I don't know, I'm not aware, where
So-
was that?
Somebody dumped the mattress off the side of Obispo
Oh, I didn't know that,
several
'cause
weeks ago.
usually
and-
I call Recology and they'll come get it, but I haven't seen it. I usually don't drive that stretch right there, so I don't see, but I'll check it tomorrow and see, and I'll ask them to pick it up if it's still there. Yeah, let's check
Yeah.
it.
It's really, you
Yeah.
don't even have to get out of the car. Just
Usually
drive
they
by
get
and
dumped
you'll
in
see it.
Princeton somewhere, or right here on Obispo, and I'll see
Okay.
it, but yeah, it's off the highway.
and I, one more thing?
Yes.
Were you gonna?
No, go ahead.
I know you mentioned to me that one of the logs has now been moved 90 degrees.
Two of them have now, yeah, two of them are.
It does seem to me it's a safety issue to have people driving through that lot. And can we get them,
No.
what,
Simply put, no.
we can't put them
We
back?
had a long back and forth with the county about that, and it's this whole CDP, you're denying coastal access and all that kind of stuff. So, it's a big political firestorm. Jonathan, one of his last things before he retired, literally went back and forth and had conference calls with myself, John Niblin from the county, Jonathan, nothing's easy. So, it was a big stink, so the best we got is kind of a little, hey, we'll let those logs lay where they lie, and that's it, so. Because, you know, I'd like to tell you better news, but if we block that, we're gonna have the county, we're gonna have a battle with the county, we're gonna have a legal battle.
So if we put a park there, we have to allow access across that
Now,
property?
that's different, because if we go and do something like that, we'll go get through a coastal development permit and permit the issues. So Jonathan's, you know, as he usually
Okay.
does, he set us up correctly, saying, just so you know, when we put our park in, it'll be part of the thing, and you can't deny us that, and we're, you know, that lot is not a road pass-through between Obispo and the highway. So they understand that, but, you know, just, we're not gonna pick the fight now.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you, Delia, did you have anything else on administrative staff report?
The only thing I wanted to mention is I didn't forget about the check signing issue, however, that, one of our directors was out of town, so I'll just need to talk to you after the meeting to organize that again for hopefully in the near future, because we have two signers who need to get on the new account, okay?
Okay. Is there anything in the way of an engineer's report?
Yes, so after our last meeting, I met with John Rayner and his cohorts at Kennedy Jenks again. We took the final steps toward the 5-year CIP, so they'll be redrafting that, finalizing that, and that'll be part of our budget process come May, so that's good news. We are also moving forward, we outlined a plan for the CCTVing of the sewer mains that we've targeted here, so we sent out an RFP, request for proposal. So that's going out, it's gone out to people, so he's ready to move on that. It's probably gonna be something like $25,000–$30,000, that's in our budget. We're looking at our purchasing policy to see if I can approve that as part of it, or if it has to come back to the board, so. But we're moving forward with that, and, John Zavo from SAM contacted us about the bridge over Murata. So I guess that bridge moved a little, and it moved the pipe on our bridge. And we've got a big 10-inch sewer pipe on the bridge. That's our old pipe. We've got the new 2-inch pipe on the bridge. I'm kind of loud. I thought Zavo knew that. But, and maybe he did, I shouldn't say that. But, so anyway, our 2-inch pipe that's actually carrying sewage is on the new bridge. So if anyone says, oh my God, the old bridge is falling down, it may be, but that pipe has nothing in it, so. So that's it.
Have we made provision to take that old pipe away when we solve the overall problem?
that's gonna go away, I think, when they do the new bridge. I emailed John, I don't think he emailed, or he did, I forgot, because I asked that question, I said, I assume they're taking out the old bridge as part of, they're removing the new old bridge. Thought he said they were, but yes, we'll go. And we're also making provisions to turn that pipe around to go up to, whatever the street is up there, Alameda or something, because we won't be able to cross the bridge, obviously.
Right. Has there been any progress with state parks and the easement?
Yes, actually quite a bit. Yeah,
Wow,
they-
good.
Yeah, every time I see the email, it's shocking. They're actually moving forward and prosecuting our stuff. They're letting us go on their site to do preliminary surveys. I'm glad you reminded me of that. Preliminary surveying on it even before we get the easement, so I kinda laughed because I thought, like, I sent the crew out there and you never know, but it's still nice that they said, yes, go out there and get going, so, good news.
All right, great.
Is there any schedule, I know that we provided some easement documents to Sam on the underground tanks. Is there any indication of when that project might actually happen? Just to-
No, the CDP, I don't know when that's out, I have not heard, but let me check on that.
Good.
I mean, they're obviously none, because you guys haven't heard about it. It'll have to come back to your board for the CDP, but I'll check with Sam.
Okay, last item is future agenda items. We didn't have the list at the back of the packet this time. I would like to have that
Sorry about that, that was my fault.
provided every time. And
Not a
unless,
lot on.
unless anyone wants to say something about future agenda items,
And as always, you can email us if you need.
this meeting is adjourned.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.